All right, so we're back with another Banadir Fragrance video this week, and what I have here today is I've got a bunch of different 10 ml samples from Banadir Fragrance. So if you were interested in the inspired fragrances from Banadir Fragrance, they do now have these 10 ml decants that really come in pretty nice presentation, man. You get like this, sort of slim box that they come in. They have the Banadir Fragrance branding on, the front and the back of the box. You've got the actual website on both sides of the box. And again, this is a 10 ml. All right. So the 10 mls, these go for, I believe, $10 is what they go for. And then the full bottles of at least most of these fragrances that I have here in this video, most of them are a little bit higher. So they are like, I believe $44.95. So like $5 more than the initial sort of $39.99 price that the initial fragrances came out at. All right. So that is pretty much, that's the presentation for like the actual box. And then once you open it up, you get this, tall 10 ml glass decant here. You've got the Banadir Fragrance branding here on the front of the actual vial. I can't tell if that's like a sticker or if it's like actually, I don't know, engraved on there. I can't really tell. But you've got the Banadir Fragrance sort of branding here. And then you have the number or the actual number of the fragrance here. So this is number 26, which I believe this one is their take on Nimosite, and then 10 ml written down here at the bottom. All right. Then the cap here feels pretty solid. It does feel like it's like plastic, but it doesn't feel super cheap. And then as far as the sprayer goes, the sprayer is pretty decent for, like a decant. All right. So just to get started here, what I'm going to be doing in this video is just kind of giving my initial thoughts on these fragrances to kind of let you know, which one of these I feel like are, worth purchasing. And, I do have other inspired fragrances of most of these that I'll kind of be giving like slight sort of comparisons to let you know whether or not I feel like the Banadir version is better, or if the current inspired fragrance that I actually own a full bottle of is better or not. All right. So just to get started, like I said, this one, number 26, this one is definitely, as I'm smelling it now, is the Nimosite. And what I'll say is, when I initially sprayed this on, and I did a side-by-side between this and Nimosite. Nimosite, for probably like the first 5 minutes or so, like the first 5 or 10 minutes, it definitely smelled better. I was getting a much more sort of richer herb sort of smell from Nimosite, which, I always have kind of felt like that's been like the hardest part of that fragrance to really kind of, recreate. Even with something like Einash Lymphinate, even though this one does, do it better than others, it still wasn't like a complete one-to-one to Nimosite. But after 10 minutes, like 5 to 10 minutes, it was like a switch got flipped on this fragrance. And it immediately became like much more richer and, much more sort of herbal, just the way that I remember Nimosite actually smelling like. I mean, it definitely, it was like a night and day difference, between like that first 5 to 10 minutes and, everything after that 10 minutes. I feel like for the first 5 to 10 minutes or so, this Banadir number 26, it definitely, it smells, and I mean, it could be due to the fact that, this fragrance is, it definitely is like newly made. I believe Salim told me that, like, you know, these samples that I have here are only like maybe a week old or so, or maybe at this point like a week and a half or so. So these are definitely freshly made. And with some of these, you can definitely kind of tell for sure, especially like in the opening notes. And I would say even in the opening of these two, the Einash and the Banadir number 26, the Einash does smell a little bit more richer. Um, you know, especially when it comes to like that sort of herbal, spicy opening that you get with the Monsite. Now, again, this still doesn't have, you know, as much sort of richness as what the Monsite does when you first spray it on. But this, I would say, is like the closest one that I've smelled that really kind of, you know, gets super close to the opening of the Monsite. But yeah, man, after like 5 to 10 minutes or so, I would say probably closer to about 10. That's when the Banadir number 26 just, like I said, it completely like changes gears. The herbs really start to come alive. They were smelling even more richer than what the Monsite was at that point. And this definitely smelled like the stronger, richer, you know, fragrance than what the Monsite was. And it did it in a way to where it didn't completely change like the character of the fragrance. Like it still smelled like Le Monsite, but just when you smelled it side by side with Le Monsite, it smelled considerably stronger, which makes sense. You know, this is an extrait de parfum. The Monsite is an eau de parfum, and you could smell that for sure. So I would absolutely say that, you know, so far anyway, this has been the closest to the Monsite that I've smelled, the Banadir number 26. So I did go ahead and, you know, just purchase a full bottle of this that's on the way. But yeah, man, I would say don't judge this fragrance, especially, you know, when you first get it, because more than likely it's going to be freshly made. Salim said that, you know, he makes these like freshly, he makes them fresh right when you order them. So definitely you're going to want to let these sort of maturate a little bit. But yeah, man, I mean, when I first sprayed this on, I was like, okay, this is definitely, it's not as rich. But again, after like that 5 to 10 minutes, it was absolutely better than the Monsite for me. So definitely, man, I recommend number 26 from Banadir. So this one is number 24. And I think this one might actually be the Aventus. Which, I'll be honest, the Aventus one, like I wasn't super impressed with this one. Now, you know, I understand when it comes to Aventus and recreating Aventus, it's a little bit hard to really judge like an Aventus interpretation because batch variation is definitely a real thing with this fragrance, and different batches of it do smell different for sure. You know, some batches are fruitier, some batches are smokier, some batches are muskier. This one seems to be pretty vanilla heavy. So that is a real thing. But what I will say is with this version of Aventus, this one is definitely different from, I would say, any other batch of Aventus that I've smelled. And I would also say that it's different from any other like Aventus interpretation that I've smelled. This to me, the Banadir version, it seems to be like a little bit more heavier on I would say like the oak moss for sure. It has more oak moss in it, and it also, to me, it smells, it has like a slightly more spicier undertone to it, to be honest. Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I noticed. And it kind of, it's like that not just for like the first couple of minutes or anything like that. It's like that for, I would say, at least like the first hour and a half to 2 hours or so. Now after that, it does definitely start to smell more and more like Aventus. So I would say for sure, like once you probably get to like around that sort of 2 to 3 hour mark or so, then it starts to smell a lot more like, you know, what you would expect Aventus to smell like for the most part. But really for like that first, like I said, hour and a half, 2 hours or so, it's definitely more oak moss heavy to me, a little bit more spicier. Um, the pineapple in this is maybe a little bit more synthetic smelling than what it is in, you know, the OG Aventus. So I mean, I would say this may be one where maturation may be needed, and this may get better over time. Like I said, definitely after the first couple of hours or so, it starts to smell a lot more like Aventus. And it also, this to me performs like most other batches of Aventus have performed on me as well. So I only get, for the most part, I would say like probably 5 hours or so maximum really with this fragrance. Closer to about, probably I would say around 4 to 5 hours or so is really what I get with this before it really kind of just like disappears on my skin. I'll have to give it more wearings and see if it gets better over time. But so far, this one is not outperforming, you know, the batch of Aventus that I have. And like I mentioned in previous videos, I believe this one is like a 19 PL1 batch. This one performs very, very good on me. This is definitely the best performing Aventus batch that I've tried. So I don't want to say that this has poor performance, because relative to any other batch of Aventus that I've tried, it's basically about the same for the most part. It's just smell wise, this does smell a little different from, you know, what I'm used to as far as Aventus smelling like. So this one, I would say, you know, maybe get a 10 ml of it and at least try it and see, you know, if this is something that you know, you might still like it. You know, the quality definitely smells pretty good. I would say the blend on this is not as good as the original Creed, but it is still decent for sure. Just not necessarily the best Aventus interpretation, you know, that I've smelled per se. So that one is the Aventus, and again, that one was 24. And then the next one, I believe this was the Oud Maracuja one, so number 27. So yeah, this one is Oud Maracuja. This one was definitely one of the best ones. So when it comes to, say for instance, you know, Banadir number 27 and something like Azure Oud, I would say the Banadir blows Azure Oud out of the water. And it's mainly because, you know, you get the same sort of strength level that you get with the original Oud Maracuja from this one. Whereas the Azure Oud, you can definitely tell that this one is toned down a little bit. Now, for some people, you may actually prefer that from the Azure Oud. Because, I mean, I sprayed this actually last night, like in my closet where I have all of my fragrances. And I just sprayed it just to kind of test it out. And every time I went back just into my bedroom, I could just smell the fragrance in the entire bedroom, the entire closet. And my closet is pretty big. So this is a super, super strong fragrance. Again, just like the original. When compared to the original, I would say that the original Oud Maracuja, it has a little bit more of that passion fruit. So the passion fruit definitely seems to be a little bit more present in that fragrance. Seems to be done a little bit better in the original. You know, it comes across a little bit more higher quality, I guess you could say, in the original Oud Maracuja. And this fragrance, the Banadir number 27, this to me seems to be slightly more kind of oud and leather leaning, you know, than the passion fruit. So, I mean, I feel like even the original Oud Maracuja, that definitely to me has more kind of like oud and leather than what it does passion fruit. It's not kind of like an equal blend to me, but to me, the Oud Maracuja does have more passion fruit in it than what this does. This, I feel like the passion fruit is always kind of just like in the background, even in like the initial opening spray. You do definitely smell that passion fruit really the whole time in the background and like those fruity notes, but it's not as prominent as what you get in like the opening of Oud Maracuja. And then even after like those first few minutes where you get the most fruitiness from Oud Maracuja, I feel like with this one, even after like that first 5 to 10 minutes or so, it's still going to be a little bit more heavier on like the oud and the leather. But again, the performance is just as nuclear as what Oud Maracuja is in this fragrance. And I mean, I would say it's very, very close. This is definitely so far the closest that I've smelled to Oud Maracuja. Like I said, it just kind of has some slight, you know, sort of differences, but it's definitely closer and smells higher quality and just overall, in my opinion, a little bit better than what the Azur Oud does. All right. So again, man, definitely check out Banadir number 27. So this one is God of Fire. So this one is Banadir number 25. This one, it's still like a mixed bag with me. Like this definitely still is, it smells good, but when I kind of smell it side by side to, you know, God of Fire or even like the Vulcan Few, to me, Vulcan Few smells a little bit richer so far anyway than what this Banadir number 25 does. Now, when I smell this now side by side with the original God of Fire, I can definitely tell that there are like some differences for sure, you know, with this fragrance as compared to God of Fire. This almost kind of comes across a little bit more like a twist. And I'm starting to prefer this even more than I do the original God of Fire. This is definitely, it's matured into like, I don't want to say a completely different scent than what it was when I initially got it a few months ago, but this is noticeably different now than what it was before. When I first got this, like I mentioned in previous videos, there was like a noticeable kind of like lemon sort of note in the undertone of this fragrance that I felt like kind of made it smell a little bit more cheaper. That lemon smell that I mentioned before, that has gone away, not completely, but I mean, it's definitely smoothened out a lot. And this has definitely gotten a lot more sort of richer. And just overall, it smells better now for sure. So I can say for sure, I prefer this to the original God of Fire. So I think I'll always kind of have preference for the Vulcan Few. But if we're talking about this compared to the original or even like the Alexandria version, Fire of God, this is definitely going to be very close to those fragrances. I do think that this still does need to probably maturate a little bit, especially when you first spray it on in the opening. It doesn't come across as smooth to me as like what the original or even the Alexandria does. But probably after like 5 minutes or so, that's when it really starts to become super close for sure. The mango in the original God of Fire so far, when compared to this, does smell, more richer and a little bit more, well put together. But like I said, this to me, it kind of smells like really raw and fresh. So I would say this probably needs to macerate a little bit to really kind of get its full potential. I'll have to see, what happens. So that's why I'm just kind of doing first impressions on these so far. But so far, man, this seems to be pretty good. The performance on it is at least about, I would say, 7 hours or so far on this fragrance, that I've gotten. So it doesn't seem to last as long as what the Vulcan Few does for me so far. But, again, like I mentioned, I can just tell this is a very raw and fresh fragrance so far. So, I would say probably within the next couple of weeks or so, I should expect to see like a considerable change, within how this smells. But so far, I would say this is very accurate to the original. Definitely up there kind of with the Alexandria version. Again, I can just kind of tell that this needs to sort of macerate and sit for a little bit. All right. So this one was Banadir number 25. God of Fire interpretation. The next one that we have here. So this was this is Banadir number 13. This is the YSLY EDP interpretation. This one was really good. I want to say this might have been like the best one out of all of these that I got. Now I don't have like a sample of YSLY EDP, and I don't have the original fragrance, but I've owned YSLY EDP. I had that fragrance a few years ago, so I'm pretty familiar with how that fragrance smelled. And this seems to be like pretty spot on to it. I mean, I think in the initial opening, the original YSL is maybe a little bit more sort of sweeter than what this is when you initially spray it on. Which it kind of seems like that's like a common theme with these Banadir fragrances. It's like the first few minutes of most of them, they're like a little different from what the original fragrance is. But then like after that 5 minutes or so, a lot of these come like over 90% close to the original. So this seems to be the same thing. I feel like the herbs that you get in YSLY EDP, that part of it, at least in the first initial couple of minutes or so, like the herbs and the citruses, from what I remember, those are a little bit more richer and more present in the original. But this one, after that, I would say I'm getting YSLY EDP like to the T. The other thing that I really enjoyed about Banadir number 13, as compared to like the original YSLY EDP, is I didn't really seem to go nose blind to this. Every time, and that's the reason why I got rid of my bottle of YSLY EDP, is because like I remember the first time that I even just tried that fragrance, I had like a little probably 2 ml decant of it, sprayed it on, and like probably 20 minutes after that I couldn't smell it. And it was just because I was going nose blind to it. And when I got my full bottle of it, it was the exact same thing. I would spray it on, and 20-30 minutes later I couldn't smell it. But like if I gave somebody a hug or something like that, it would like transfer over to them, and they could say like, yeah, like I could still smell your fragrance on me. So it wasn't that it wasn't a strong fragrance or anything like that. It was just that I was going nose blind to it. And this fragrance was not the case as far as nose blindness goes. So I remember I sprayed this on the other day, and this was so strong. Like I sprayed it on at night after, right when I kind of took my like before bed shower or whatnot, sprayed it on at night, woke up the next morning. I didn't end up going to the gym that morning, so I didn't like take a shower that morning, and I just kind of worked through the day, and I could smell this the entire day, like the entire day. You know, it wasn't like super, super strong or anything like that, but I was getting wafts of it the entire day. And that was a really, really nice experience, you know, with wearing this fragrance. So I would say for sure, performance on this is going to be really, really good. At least for me anyway. I don't go nose blind to it. So if that's the problem that you've had with YSL EDP, then I definitely recommend trying out the Banadir 13. And I mean, again, smell wise, this smells exactly like what I remember YSL EDP smelling like. So, I mean, I have to get a sample of the original to really, really kind of like delve into like all the subtle, you know, details and stuff like that and differences. But this, from what I can remember, it smells exactly like it. All right. So, again, man, definitely check out Banadir number 13. All right. So the next one that we have here, this one, what is this? Oh, so yeah, this one is Greenley. So this one is number 14. So this is their take on Parfums de Marly's Greenley. And, you know, again, same kind of thing with some of these other fragrances. I felt like when I first sprayed this on in like the initial opening, it smelled like Greenley, but you know, it kind of had slight sort of difference to it. I don't even remember necessarily what the difference exactly was to Greenley, because I wasn't comparing it to like this clone Aether. I was comparing it directly to Greenley to see, you know, how close it was to that specific fragrance. And I noticed that I think Greenley maybe it smelled a little bit more better blended in like the initial few minutes of the fragrance. And I mean, right now I'm just going to kind of compare it to the Aether Extrait. So I mean, really, I would say as far as this compared to the Aether Extrait, they smell like identical almost. I think one thing that I did smell as far as the difference goes between the Banadir and like the original Greenley was, I got that same kind of signature like herbal Parfums de Marly kind of undertone that I get with a lot of their fragrances, really with most of them. I got that with the original Greenley. Whereas with the Banadir, I didn't necessarily get that. But yeah, man, I would say this is definitely, in terms of like how the opening smells, it definitely smells very close to Aether Extrait for sure. But one thing that I will say, you know, with comparing these two fragrances is the Banadir seems to be even more diffusive than what Aether Extrait is. So, you know, if you've watched any video that I've done on Aether Extrait, I've always kind of maintained that Aether Extrait was like a stronger version of Greenley, basically, with not really too many, you know, differences to note. And I can easily say that the Banadir seems to be stronger even than the Aether Extrait. And it seems to smell a little bit more higher quality than the Aether Extrait. So, I mean, I think for me, I would probably gravitate more towards this Banadir version for sure. Mainly because of the strength difference, and it, like I said, it seems to be a little bit more diffusive than what Aether Extrait does. but it still has that same kind of like woody, green apple and grassy type of, you know, smell that Greenley has. But it just seems to be a little bit more amplified than what, you know, even Aether Extrait is. It's considerably stronger than what Greenley is for sure, you know. But yeah, it's even stronger, I would say, than what the Aether Extrait is from French Avenue. So um, really, I guess it kind of depends. I think if you feel like the strength on Aether Extrait is like just right, then, you know, maybe you may not like this one. This one might be too strong. But if you feel like Aether Extrait even kind of sits, you know, maybe still too close to your skin, doesn't really project enough, then I do think that the Banadir version would definitely be, you know, a good choice. I haven't really given this like I haven't had a chance to really give it like a full wearing enough to, you know, be able to tell you how much the longevity is and stuff like that. But I'll definitely say for sure that the projection on this is better than obviously the original, but also better than the Aether Extrait. All right. So would definitely for sure recommend Banadir number 14. All right, so the next one that we have here, this is, so yeah, this is Naxos. Yeah. So this one, like when I initially smelled this, I was like, okay, yeah, that smells like Naxos. And then, but see, I didn't smell this, like initially, I didn't smell it side by side to Naxos. I just kind of sprayed it on the strip, smelled it, and was like, okay, yeah, this is Naxos. But then I actually sprayed it on myself and then sprayed Naxos on like my other arm. And then it was like, oh, yeah, this is not really Naxos. This is definitely, I would say, this smells a lot more kind of like Fierte Luna. And the reason I say that is because that really sort of like rich lavender note that you get in like the initial opening of Naxos, that seems to be missing in this fragrance. When I first spray it on, I'm not really getting that lavender. Yeah, I mean it's just it kind of comes across as smelling like really like you're getting those florals that you get from Naxos. Maybe just a touch of honey. I would say this has a little bit more honey than what Fierte Luna did. Like Fierte Luna really didn't have much of any sort of honey in it to my nose. This has a little bit in it. And I mean, I feel like the thing that's also kind of missing with this is the citrus in the opening that you also get with Naxos is a little bit more richer in Naxos than what it is in this. So, I mean, really for me, I would say the only interpretation so far that I've smelled that really is able to, you know, get Naxos down, it's not like 100% because it kind of does like its own sort of thing. But to me, the one that really does the opening the best is the 1981X from Alexandria. I haven't smelled anything after this that, you know, is able to get the opening, you know, of Naxos down. And like I said, really, it's still not exactly the same. If anything, I would say the opening of this is actually better, in my opinion, than what Naxos is. I think overall, this is a better fragrance than what Naxos is just in general. But, you know, this definitely, it does the opening better. You know, you can smell those citruses in the opening. You can smell the lavender. And I feel like that's what really kind of makes Naxos Naxos. So when you're missing those things, it kind of comes across as like a completely different fragrance for the most part. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I would say that this is still going to be better than Fierte Luna because it does still have, to me, a little bit more sort of honey to it than what Fierte Luna did, but it's not that much better. So I would say this was definitely the most disappointing one, I think, out of the the bunch that I have here. This one I would say is the most disappointing, and then I think the second after that would be like the Aventus one. But the Aventus compared to Aventus, the original, I think the Banadir version definitely was a lot better, compared to the original than what this was. This, like I said, is definitely, it's missing some things for sure. Whereas the Aventus one, it still smells like Aventus, but just in some ways a little bit different. All right. So again, this one, the Naxos Banadir number 30, for me, I would say I wouldn't get a full bottle of this one. Hopefully hopefully it'll change over, the next few weeks or months with some maturation. But at least from what I'm getting from this so far, I don't necessarily see it, changing that much necessarily. All right. So that was that. And then the next one is number 29. This is, I don't even have the thing in here anymore. I think this one is Symphony. I think. Let's see. So yeah, this one is Symphony. So this number 29, this is a very good interpretation of Symphony. Now, I feel like this is another one just like that God of Fire interpretation, where I think really to be able to fully judge this one, I probably need to kind of let it sit for a little bit. But so far, anyway, I think this one, it smells slightly better than the Joe Milano like Game of Spades Emerald. I think I can definitely say that one for sure. Now, when I smell it side by side with Symphony, to me, the original Symphony is a little bit more rounded. I think is definitely what I can say about that fragrance compared to the Banadir number 29. And, to me, this comes across a little bit more rindier. So like you're getting like the grapefruit and the bergamot citruses in this. But to me, you're getting a little bit more of like a zest or a rind sort of smell from this fragrance than what you get from the original Symphony. And it kind of reminds me of, what Alexandria Fragrance's Orchestra smelled like when I first kind of got it. Whereas, now this has kind of matured into smelling like almost exactly like Symphony. And I'm hoping that that's the case with this Banadir version. I do feel like as it starts to dry down, it does start to become closer and closer to Symphony. But it's definitely a lot more gradual. So it's not like some of these other ones where it's like, yeah, after like 5 or 10 minutes, it smells exactly like the original fragrance. I feel like with this one, you kind of have to be hours into the fragrance before it really starts to smell like the original. And I mean, I'm talking about several hours, like at least probably 4 to 5 hours into the fragrance. Now, one thing that I will say is strength on this is amazing. So this is easily going to last on you over 12 hours for sure. So strength is really, really good with this. The projection is really good with it as well. The only thing is, like, I would just say the original Symphony seems to be a little bit more rounded, seems to be slightly higher quality. But again, this fragrance to me, it does like the God of Fire ones smell a little bit raw and like brand new. So I think that this one probably needs to sit for a little bit before really kind of judging it. But so far, this is definitely one of the best Symphony interpretations. I still would say that Orchestra is better, but it's kind of like it's not necessarily fair because, like I said, this bottle has maturated for well over a year, whereas this fragrance, you know, is what, like a week and a half old. So, you know, I would say take that as you may, but this fragrance, Banadir Fragrance number 29, is still going to be one of the best, you know, interpretations. And honestly, I think you could probably say, even though I think this fragrance after a year of maturation does smell better than what the Banadir does, when you kind of compare the price, this definitely is the better buy. So 100 ml of this is going to cost you $44.95 or $44.99. I'll have links in the description to where you can purchase all of these. Basically $45 is what 100 ml of this is going to cost you. 100 ml of this is going to cost you like $120. So even though, again, yes, this smells a little bit richer, this is not too far behind it at just like a week and a half old or so, and it's considerably less. So really, I would say this probably is the best interpretation really that you can smell, because it's even cheaper than the Joe Milano version. And to me, even at a week and a half old, this does still smell a little bit better than what the Joe Milano version did. All right. So again, man, definitely check out number 29 from Banadir. All right, and then the last one on the list, I know without even having to look at the number, this one is going to be the Stellar Times interpretation. Yeah. So this one is number 28. So this is, again, the Stellar Times interpretation. Absolutely spot on. This is one that I would say it doesn't need any sort of maturation or anything like that. I immediately could tell, like when I sprayed this on, like, yeah, this is absolutely Stellar Times. And it has a slightly more kind of richer and concentrated smell than what something like French Avenue's Lumiere L does. This also to me does smell better than the Alexandria Stellar Moments does. This smells like, really, I would say after probably 5 minutes or so, this smells identical to Stellar Times. It does. I think in the initial 5 minutes, the Stellar Times is a little bit more smoother. But I mean, it's like once a lot of these kind of settle down after like that 5 minute mark, these are extremely close, extremely high quality. And I tested these out yesterday. This and the original Stellar Times. Could not tell a difference after 5 minutes. Absolutely could not tell a difference. This, I would say, was like the exact same fragrance, basically. It projected the exact same way as the Louis Vuitton did. It smelled exactly the same. It had the same level of like depth and quality. The blend on it was, you know, basically exactly the same as the Louis Vuitton. Like this, absolutely, I would say I would recommend to anybody looking for like, you know, a Stellar Times interpretation. This easily is the best one for sure. So definitely get a full bottle of this if you're looking for, you know, Stellar Times, but obviously you're not looking to spend $600 for it. This is really good. This also does last just as long as Stellar Times does, so easily over 12 hours. This one is really, really a banger, man, if you're looking for that scent profile. So again, man, check out Banadir's number 28. All right, and so that is the list, man. So, I mean, I feel like really out of, how many was it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Out of 9 fragrances, really, I only had, I guess you could say, negative things to say about 2 of them. And I mean, really the Aventus one, I won't say was like a complete failure. It just smelled a little bit more different than what I was used to, you know, in terms of most Aventus interpretations or even batches of Aventus that I've smelled. But again, that fragrance, once you get to the dry down, it definitely smells a lot like Aventus. I think the only one that was like a true disappointment was the Naxos interpretation, man. So really happy with these. Like I said, I did actually go out and get like a full bottle of, I think at least 2 of them. I feel like a lot of these I probably don't necessarily need a full bottle of. I think 10 ml should last me a pretty long time. And I mean, plus I don't really have a lot of space to just be buying a bunch of bottles like that. So I was really happy with most of these, I would say, for sure. So I would definitely recommend them. Definitely I'll have, again, links in the description to where you can pick all of these fragrances up. Also, you know, let me know in the comments if you all have tried any that I went over in this video. And if so, do you agree with me in terms of, you know, how close these actually come to the original fragrances? All right. Also, if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see you all in the next video.